Now, I said that Paul wrote to Timothy. Many commentators, folks that write about the Bible, they believe that John was writing his letter to the church at Ephesus. John wanted to put to rest the argument that Jesus was anything but God in human flesh. Like I said, there were people that were teaching that he was a deity. He was just this kind of ghost type thing, almost like Slimer from Ghostbusters. There was another teaching that was out there that Jesus was born a human being. He was born just like our son's going to be born here shortly. And then he was raised as a normal human being. And then when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist and the dove flew down and God split the sky open and said, "This is my beloved son," at that point, Jesus came down and basically possessed the Spirit came down and possessed Jesus, making him so that he had human flesh for a short time. And then he did that three and a half year time that he was here on earth during his ministry. And just before the man died on the cross, then the deity left him. So that was some of the teaching that was going on. And John wanted to put this to rest. So he wrote First John. He wrote the epistle of First John. And he did it basically for three reasons. The first one was he wanted to make sure that his readers were believing the right things because it's essential for salvation. Believing the right things is essential for our salvation. The second reason he was writing it is because believing the right things about Jesus will give us confidence in God. And the third thing is that he wanted people to believe the right things about Jesus because it's necessary when we're sharing our faith. Let's look at the first one here. Believing the right things about Jesus is essential. You should be at 1 John 1. We're going to look at verses 1 through 3. It goes like this. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled of the word of life. For the life was manifested, and we have seen it, and bear witness, and show unto you that eternal life, which was with the Father, and which was manifested unto us. That which we have seen and heard declare we unto you, that ye also may have fellowship with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. In John 1:14, another book that the Apostle John wrote, it reads like this. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glories of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. And this truth that Jesus was born in flesh can be found in many other passages throughout the New Testament. Just a couple of them are Romans 1, verse 3. If you're taking notes, you can write that down and look it up later. Romans 1, verse 3, Galatians 4:4, and Hebrews 1, verses 1 through 3. Now, to further make his point, John went on to list 3 ways that he had interacted with Jesus while he was on earth. In verse 1, it's got these 4 ways here. The first one is, it says, John heard the Lord speak. John had the great privilege. He was fortunate to be one of Jesus' most intimate friends. If you look throughout the New Testament, anytime you see Jesus going anywhere, he's always got 3 guys with him. He's got Peter, he's got James, and he's got John. I heard one preacher say one time that John and Jesus were almost like best friends. That John was kind of like the little kid brother that always tagged along. And I did a research project. For most of you know that I'm in seminary now. I had to do a project on John, and I got to trace through the New Testament all the experiences that John had with Jesus. And I can't wait to get to heaven, sit down and talk with him, and find out all the great things that he experienced. But he says here in 1 John 1 that he heard Jesus. He actually got to hear him with his own ears. And the Greek word that they use here, I think last time I preached, I shared with you that I was taking Greek. I know how to look Greek words up in a Greek dictionary. I don't know how to pronounce them. I don't know how to read Greek, but I know how to look them up to find out what they mean. And the Greek word here, it means that he heard him in the past, but the things that he heard were still having an impact on him right now in the present. So he heard these things, and he heard them many years ago, but he still remembers them, and they're still impacting his life today. And so when John was talking to his readers, he was saying, listen, you can believe me, I heard him. It's still affecting my life today. Not only did he hear him, but he also saw him. And the Greek word for hear means that it's similar to the hearing. He saw him. He's not seeing him anymore. It wasn't a vision that he had. He saw him while he was on earth. But the things that he saw from him are still having an impact on his life today. And I can only imagine that if we had had the opportunity to see Christ and to see him do the things that he did, that they would still be having an impact on our life today had we seen him like that. John MacArthur, if you're not familiar with him, I would highly recommend that you get familiar with him. A great man. He's been at the same church, I believe, for over 40 years, which is just a testimony to his faithfulness. But he pointed out that the phrase that John, I'm sorry. Okay, no, I didn't lose my place. The Kindle's still working. He points out there that he added the phrase "with our eyes" because he wanted to make sure that the people that were reading this couldn't say that he was having some sort of vision or it was some kind of hallucination or something. He wanted to prove that he actually saw him with his eyes. Then the third thing that John points out is John states that he looked upon Jesus. And when I was reading through this, I couldn't understand. Well, you just said you saw him with your eyes. Of course you looked upon him. But the Greek phrase here, it has the idea of a long, searching gaze. And as I was preparing for this, I was listening to different messages, and I think Pastor Devin said recently that he wanted to just go back to the internet and find a message on the passage he was preaching on and put it on. So, but what I do when I was preparing for this, I found a bunch of messages on this passage, and so I was listening to them. And one of the preachers said that the Greek phrase here has the idea of going to a movie theater or going to see a play. And when we go in to see a play or we go in to see a movie, we fix our eyes on the screen. And there's very little that's going to happen that's going to draw our attention away from what's going on the stage or what's going on the movie screen in front of us. That's what was going on here when John said that he looked upon Jesus. He had his gaze fixed on him, and he was taking in everything that was going on. John was there to see Jesus exert his authority over the demons. You can read about that in Matthew chapter 8. He was there to see Jesus exert his authority over disease, and we can find those all throughout the New Testament. To see him exert his authority over nature, and to see him exert his authority over death. And finally, the last thing that John says here in 1 John 1, verse 1, is that John says he touched him with his hands. The Greek word here means to feel after. I mean, John actually put his hands on Jesus. And I mean, he spent 3 years with him traveling throughout Jerusalem and the surrounding cities. So he had to come in contact with him. John put that here because he was trying to put to rest the idea that Jesus was just an apparition or a ghost, that he actually physically touched him. The Greek word that's used here in this passage is also used in Luke 24:39, and that verse says this: "Behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have." So the Greek word that John was using here was also used there when Jesus appeared to the disciples after the resurrection to prove that he had a physical body. I'm sure they would have known whether Jesus was a real physical person or just a ghost. I mean, if you spend 3 years with somebody, I haven't been able to spend that much time with Pastor Devin. I have had some opportunities to sit down with him. I can tell you he's not a ghost. Right? Even in the brief time that I've had with him, I can tell you that he's not a ghost. I can tell you that Greg here is not a ghost. I haven't spent 3 years with him, but I can tell you that. I think that if John spent 3 years with Jesus, he would have had to have been pretty dense to think that he was a real person if he wasn't. But let's look at, John goes on to say there is a way to determine if someone is teaching the correct things about Jesus. It's if you've got your Bible, flip over to 1 John 4. We're going to look at verses 1 through 3. I'll give you a second to do it. It should just be a page or two. And it says this: "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already it is in the world.